everywhere you look right now, you're going to at least see one or two articles, one or two videos talking about how Ubisoft is dead, how this is the end for them, and all of the above. I haven't done the math, and to be honest, I'm not bothered to do the math because it's their company, the Guillermo family. They need to be the ones that navigate through this crazy, situation that they find themselves in. However, I am interested in knowing how the Division Three's development is going to go ahead and push through with all of the different uncertainties that may be in the entire pipeline. I think, first of all, it must be acknowledged that Ubisoft missed a very, very big opportunity. They did not necessarily, in a sense, abandon the IPs that were very pivotal to them, all of them. They were still supporting the division and so on and so forth. But what they didn't necessarily realize was how strong the live service, I don't know how to put it, the cage was when it came down to player engagement and some of what has made a lot of these games possible in terms of these last few years. A lot of what makes these games possible is something that Team Sweeney said. And this, what you're seeing here, is the, engagement tracker for the week ending December 28th, showing the games that basically players played the most. It's the fact that a lot of these games are games that players can play as a community. You can play these games with other people and you can pretty much have a good time playing those games. That's the unique selling point of a lot of these particular titles overall, like from a general sense. And so them, in a sense, putting the division aside and going after Hollywood money with Massive, yes, that was a big loss of opportunity. Could they have done it, side by side, taking much longer to release those two games, Avatar and Star Wars, while they continue to support the division in a much bigger scale with much more, nearer content releases? Yes, that would have been a very good, compromise. Because at the end of the day, making an Avatar game that was in production around the same time as the Division 2, and that Avatar game not coming close in terms of revenue, that, just from a general, hypothetical perspective of mine anyways. So Division 2 already speaks volumes that, man, this was the wrong bet, or this was the wrong way to actually go ahead and sequence things. And then looking at the Star Wars Outlaws game, which also financially did not do well, both of these games cannot compare to what the Division has done for Ubisoft Massive. And so, again, you can tell with this combination, it was all off. Now, with the financial challenges that are there, we know that they're reality. How is Ubisoft going to push through this? In the development of the Division 2, they have other IPs coming out. They have the Assassin's Creed game down the road. That one's already seeing its own challenges as well. Social issues and all of that. They invested heavily into leaning that way. That's now become something that, gamers are having a whiplash towards. And they're making a Division 3 game. When it all comes down to it, them pushing through is the most important thing right now for their company. Because if they want to make it into the category where they can have games that are providing the revenue that they need and they're supporting very well, then they really have to look at, their possibilities. It's either they go in harder or bust. They have investors that are going to kind of, if they can find good middle ground, they have investor money that they can put towards some of their IPs. They have proven data. They have proven, record as to exactly what it is that's going to, that's what could happen if they're able to appeal to their audiences and to their consumers and customers. The question now is how they're going to go ahead and navigate through with, investors that would love to get a bigger piece of the pie and love to get a bigger piece of control over how the IPs go. And with the way their IPs are made, especially in the West, compared to, say, even like if you think about the division in the West and the East, right? They're both two different games. In fact, it's called something else in China. It's not even called the division in China. It's called a whole different game. It has game modes to it that, are not available to the division players in the West. It's structured differently, all of that stuff. Could it be that, those things that they probably don't want to bring into the West infiltrate and make their way into the Western versions of the game because now there's more influence and more control than some, on the game when it comes down to, say, some of the investors? These are very important questions that you could basically explore, and, you have no shortage of all kinds of different, possibilities and, potential coming into play. But that's even all the way down, say, oh, they actually finished the game. The question now is, are they able to, in this market, in these conditions, with these circumstances, go in and say, yes, they can complete a division game, and are investors interested in investing in that particular proposition? Because the numbers for the division are actually quite impressive. 40 million players have played the franchise. How they never capitalize on those 40 million is basically, in my opinion, one of the most short-sighted things that I've ever seen. They were looking for an external audience in a gaming category that usually gets bodied by live service games, while they had a thriving live service game community in the division. I just don't know how they can go ahead and do that with the data set available to them. And you know what's crazy, ladies and gentlemen, is even if they were putting their games exclusively on, say, exclusively on their Ubisoft platform, right? They had access to other data sets. Believe it or not. Like, if you think about something like, let's just look at an arbitrary data set like Steam's Best of 2023. When you look at this data, I've looked at this data set extensively. I've, pointed it out in many different forums and conversations. But when you look through this particular list, you realize that the live service games are the games on the top. Not saying single player games are bad. Not saying that this is a missive or an apologetic in some sense that, live service games are the only games that should be made. But if you've made a live service game that already has audiences, why go ahead and pretty much provide minimal support rather than continue to dig in to get these audiences to feel like they are getting value for their money? What's even crazy is the live services that are doing well here are established and old live services. So it's not that we need a new shiny game or we needed a new shiny game. We needed improvements upon the game that we already had, but Ubisoft still was not in a position to take time to even focus enough to go ahead and look at that. I mean, this particular list is the year's top gross, games by revenue, top grossing games by revenue. And on that list, you see Apex Legends of 2020, a year after the Division 2 came out, PUBG of 2017, 2 years before the Division 2 came out, Lost Ark of 2022, Dota 2 of 2013, 6 years before the Division 2 came out, right? 3 years for the first Division game came out, Counter-Strike, yeah, right. Destiny 2 of, I think, 2018 or so. I can't remember exactly when. FIFA every year, War Thunder or whatever, 2013 game. Elder Scrolls Online, 2017 game. So, again, how they basically just abandoned, number one, the first Division game was quite shocking. Yes, the player base had mostly left and dried up, but they could still go ahead and improve upon the game. They had survival, they had a formula, but I guess they had to abandon because they had already jumped into production of a next Division game. Well, now they did a next Division game, which had access to the new generation of consoles. They had access to a lot of things, learnings, things that they, basically had gleaned from past Division games. And they decided that they were going to go ahead and abandon that and try to make these single player expensive titles, by the way, that have not yielded them any fruit. So they didn't hedge themselves properly. If we go, say, maybe even to like the year that the Division 2 came out, 2019, to look at the top sellers that year, in the category, you'll see games like PUBG, Elder Scrolls Online, Rainbow Six Siege. So they were actually benefactors of this particular thing. So if they had played their cards right, I strongly believe that the Division 2 would probably right now be receiving significant support like Rainbow Six Siege did, and they could have cultivated it to the angle of, say, maybe even a game like Sea of Thieves. That's getting, yes, good amount of support, but is also making it in these lists. I mean, look at that. Look at games like Final Fantasy 14. Look at Rocket League Path of Exile. Games that actually present this, say, community style feel, games that are already established, old school. These games are rocking in those years. So now, as they're pushing through this next Division game, if they're not going with that approach, I don't know if they can even be bothered to be in business with, say, the IP itself and even the franchise. Because now we're not looking at, for a division. Again, first of all, there's a lot of people in the community who have probably just dialed out. They're no longer bothered with the whole Division thing entirely. If they're thinking that a brand new game is going to pretty much bring in all those people, well, they can kiss that goodbye. So now quality in terms of what they provide in the service is of the utmost importance at the end of the day. I thought I'd put this data set out in front of you guys, and I thought I'd hear your thoughts. Thanks so much for watching the video. I know my video intervals on the Gamer Dad channel are really, they're really big, but hey, it's by design. 1 to 2 to 3 videos every month, I think is fine for now. Having these conversations as we keep our eyes to see what Ubisoft is going to do anyways. Thank you so much for watching. Talk to me in the comment section. Peace out.